Hey everybody, welcome to my studio here in Virginia. My name is Hunter. We're going to cover the topic of carving a feather. I'm going to be using a deer mandible, deer jawbone as our example today to carve the feather, but this process works with other materials as well, so you're not restricted just to bones or skulls like I generally work with. This works on, wood, plastic, anything you can get your hands on, it'll work. Before we jump into the carving, I do want to cover the general carving setup, just to give you some ideas. I use a Dremel 4000. This runs at 35,000 RPMs, rotations per minute, which is enough for doing what we're doing today, carving bones, carving skulls. I've always used this, works great. There are other options on the market like Foredom, which is another excellent brand. You would not want to use a rotary tool that went anywhere below 15,000 RPMs because you do need kind of a combination of speed and torque, specifically when you're carving bone, but also helps for other materials as well. I had a extension on the Dremel. This is called a flex shaft. This gives you a lot more mobility and flexibility as opposed to holding the Dremel in your hand, which gets really tiring and is just really hard to maneuver. And then lastly, on the very end, I have an adjustable chuck, and this will allow you to accept any burr that is intended for a rotary tool without having to worry about cullets. So cullets, you have to take them in and out depending on the size of the burr. This is just adjustable, stick it in, tighten it up, you're good to go. And I'm not OSHA, but I would recommend some PPE. I always use earplugs, especially when you're working with a rotary tool. Eye protection, things can fly up, it happens. And then a respirator to manage inhaling any dust, especially when you're working with bones. That's very important, but any dust in general, you don't want to get that in your lungs. I always keep fresh air coming into my workspace to minimize the dust in the environment, and so I would just recommend kind of working in a good space where you can get fresh air and keep that dust out of your lungs. Step number one is going to be tracing out the feather to carve. Now, it's best to use an actual feather for reference. I mean, that is what we're trying to mimic. And if you don't have any just lying around, I got these from my neighbor's chickens. Just Google feathers and some great examples will come up. Feathers have a lot of these little breaks in the veins, and it just adds a lot of character if you add that into your carving, and just allows it to look more authentic. Okay, we are good to go. Now the first cuts we're going to make, we are going to be using a carbide cylinder burr, and we will carve the outline of the shaft that runs up the feather and then the silhouette around the feather. For the feather, we're going to be using a medium size carbide burr. If you were doing a really small project, you could use something smaller, and then occasionally on like a really big skull, I'll use the bigger one, but we're going to go with this one today. Now, the point of using a cylinder burr is to remove the foreground and make our carving kind of stand proud of the surface. It gives it a lot more depth and kind of makes it look more realistic. If you just cut in little grooves or little cuts when you're outlining your carving, it's not going to sit above the background and it's just going to look very flat. So if you hold your piece, kind of hold it horizontally to the surface as much as possible, that way when you're carving into that bone, that cylinder burr is going to help remove that material and create more of a graduated cutout area to the natural surface.
I don't know why you got me sinking so low. Yeah, girl, you got me restless. I got to know, don't keep me waiting. Set our love in motion, let's go.
Now that we have our outlines cut out, the next step is going to be sanding down the feather with 220 grit sandpaper. This will do two things. It will help when we carve in the veins along the feather, and it just helps give the piece kind of a cohesive look. It helps soften the foreground and just, again, kind of makes it all have a similar texture. Now you could just leave the feather just like it is right now with just the smooth surface. That does look pretty cool, but we will continue on to the next step, which is adding in the veins. For cutting the veins, we're going to be using an inverted cone burr. Here's a couple different sizes. We'll be going with the middle one here, and it looks just like described, like an inverted cone. And when we hold that burr to the surface of the bone, instead of holding it kind of horizontal like we were trying to do with a cylinder burr, you're going to hold it at an angle, about a 45-degree angle. And the idea is to cut each line just beside the next one, so that when you cut a little V in that bone, it connects with the peak of the last cut that you made. If you leave a lot of space in between your cuts, you'll have these big flat areas, and it'll just won't look very natural. The last step is to simply get some 320 grit sandpaper, run it over the piece just kind of like you did at the beginning, and this will, take off some of the rough edges, again, give it more of a uniform look. You have your beautiful example of a carved feather. Thank you for purchasing the guide and the video that comes along with it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Leave a comment below and I'll do my best. And yeah, thanks for stopping by.